welcome back to my channel. Sorry if you had to wait a bit for this video, but I will make up for it by putting all the information in it that is quite comprehensive on how to buy fine jewelry and to make sure that you get really the maximum value for your money. So first of all, you will need a fine alloy for your jewel. Let's maybe base this video on a very exceptional jewelry piece that most of you ladies will be owning or already own, and that's the engagement ring. So it's gonna be made of a fine alloy and of a or several gemstones. When it comes to the fine alloy, we have of course the choice when it comes to those special rings between gold and platinum. Now, you probably know and have heard about hallmarks, and if you have heard about hallmarks, you know that gold is not gold, because gold can come in different carats, and the most often seen carats for fine jewelry are either 18 karat gold or 14 karat gold. 18 karat gold means that the fine alloy consists of 75% gold, and this is also why the hallmark reads 750, and 14 karat gold consists of a little less than 60% of gold. So that explains also why 18 karat gold is more expensive than 14 karat gold, and this is also the reason why I would recommend that when you buy fine jewelry, especially when buying such really rare and special pieces like an engagement ring that will hold very precious stones, I definitely recommend that you pay attention that your jewel will be made of 18 karat gold. That is if you go for gold. Now we also have to differentiate between gold and gold, because out there we have yellow gold, which is probably the most common color, and the color comes from the gold itself and some of the alloys that are added, the rest of the 25%, so we have 75% yellow gold, and then the other alloys that are added. But what is very fashionable, especially it has been fashionable for about 2 years, 3 years now, is rose gold, and the color of rose gold comes from copper that is added to the alloy. And last but not least, white gold. White gold gets its white color either from nickel, palladium or platinum, and I would recommend that you neglect nickel. It's not so qualitatively, I mean, it will not do anything regarding allergies, but it's not very expensive, palladium being even more expensive and rarer than platinum. So be aware of that when you make your choice. Also be aware that white gold after some time might lose its white color, especially here on the inside of the rings, but that is no problem at all, because you can always have a ring rodinated, and you should always anyhow, a special piece you have should have the prongs checked regularly, have it cleaned, and then you bring it to the jeweler, and then at the same time they might rodinate your white gold piece. That was all regarding gold that you need to know, but of course you have also the choice to go for platinum. If you go for platinum, you know it's harder than gold, even harder, and it's more expensive than gold, and I would recommend that you go for 950 platinum. Now, when it comes to your special metal, also pay attention how your jewelry is made, because nowadays there are two options. Either it's cast or it's forged. Cast meaning that it can be produced much faster, and also the design and the shape can be reproduced many times before the cast as such has to be renewed. So that means also it's not gonna be such an individualistic piece. Be aware of that. Also, when a jewel is cast, you need to know that when it comes out of the cast, it's still quite raw, it still needs to be filed and polished, and also in those casts you cannot realize some fine details, or the prongs will have the tendency to be a bit broader than when a ring is forged by hand. So if this is important to you, then be aware of it, and also be aware that, for example, if you go for a platinum ring, then the cast can be quite tricky, because platinum, when it's hot and liquid, has a quite high viscosity. Then it can happen that there's little invisible, very tiny air bubbles inside the metal, and if they should be exactly at the point where there is a little prong attached to the ring, then that could have a negative effect on the stability of the ring. So be aware of that. I personally prefer forged jewels. That is because, as you know, I'm quite an individualistic person and I want my special design that should not be seen on anybody else. And if you are anything like me and you have a special idea on the design that you want, then I would recommend that you go for a forged piece. They can work the prongs in a very, very fine way, and they will try to realize anything that you ask them for. Also be aware that besides the goldsmith, there's another person working on your ring, and that's going to be the setter. And any good setter will tell you that it is easier to perfectly set a beautiful gemstone in a forged piece of jewelry rather than in a cast piece of jewelry. And why is that? That is because every gemstone is cut in a different way, and every cut is really individualistic and adapted to the very stone. And so that means that also then the forged jewelry, the prongs, are absolutely adapted to this very stone. Whereas if it's a cast jewelry, then the setter has to find kind of a workaround, and it's much more difficult for him. So this is why a setter is quite important, and many people are not aware that this is a different profession than the goldsmith himself. So now that you know everything about the fine metal part of your jewel, let's address the gemstones. So most engagement rings, they will contain diamonds on some place, either on the halo, around the center stone, or as the side stones. And yeah, this is why it's a tradition. It's for eternity of love. It's the hardest gemstone out there. On the Mohs scala, this is a scala that defines the hardness of stones, it reaches 10 and there's nothing above, and all the other gemstones that we know are below that. So be aware that if you choose another stone than a diamond, let's say for your center stone, this is absolutely feasible, but pay attention that it should not be classified less than 8 on the Mohs scala, so that you can be sure that it's not gonna break the first time you hit it somewhere, and that it has a minimum resistance. So be aware of that. And also be aware that if you go to a jeweler, don't expect the person sitting there to know everything about every single gemstones. That's far too comprehensive, far too complicated. So if you are not going for diamonds, there the training is quite good and people know themselves around. But if you go for any other stone, then make sure, read yourself into it on the internet and get the maximum of information that you need on the very stone that you're interested in, so that you really know what to expect and that nobody can you know, profit from you not knowing something. It's always good to be in the know. So educate yourself. That's always the best, in order to make sure that you get the best value for money and that you get especially what you want, because very often people will say, yeah, that doesn't exist, or you cannot get it, etc. Sometimes these answers are due to a lack of knowledge, just simply. So be sure that you are educated before you go and visit somebody in a showroom or in a shop. Now let's talk about the diamonds, because that is of course the most common stone used in engagement rings. Now nowadays we have to differentiate between natural diamonds that are mined and laboratory made diamonds that are made in a laboratory in a plasma reactor. So nowadays very often it is communicated that it is much more sustainable to buy lab-produced diamonds rather than mined diamonds, and let me tell you, that is not that easy, and that true, it's not black and white. Of course, you can be very sure that a diamond created in the laboratory is never a blood diamond. Of course, lab-created diamonds are cheaper than natural diamonds, and that is because they can be recreated in any quantities. There's no limit to production, and the very value of the diamonds lies in their rarity. So you have to be aware that when buying a lab-created diamond, it is cheaper, but it can be reproduced. So should you be forced any day to sell your stone, you will not get a lot of money for it. Even if you have spent less at the beginning, there is no value to it because there is no rarity. Also be aware that you need more electricity to produce a lab-created diamond than the sourcing of natural diamonds in a mine. And there's another point I would like to address. There are many economies in Africa that depend on the diamond industry. So if you buy a lab-created diamond, then you endanger those, the work of those employees. So it's not black and white. There are many facets to all those stories, and you have to make your choice. And also, when it comes to the mined diamonds, there are different certificates that can that ensure you that you can be sure that the diamond that you are buying and that you will be wearing on your finger is not a blood diamond, and that it's ethically sourced. So there are Canadian certificates, there are Australian certificates, there are also African certificates. So please have a look around and then make your choice based on this information. It's only you who can define what you prefer, but be in the know and be aware when you make your choice. It's not that easy. Let's talk about diamonds. No matter if they have been made in the laboratory or in if they have been mined in a mine somewhere in the world, what defines the price and what defines the quality is, of course, the weight of the diamond, which is measured in carat, and it is the color and the clarity, and of course the cut, and also what many people don't know, whether the stone has fluorescence or not. So now, the color of a diamond is rated from D being the brightest, the whitest, the purest color, and it goes to the very end of the alphabet. And then of course it gets cheaper because these stones are having like a yellow hue without being fancy yellow diamonds. We will address fancy diamonds a bit later because these are the rarest and the most expensive ones, but we are now talking white diamonds. So there the color starts with D being the brightest, the whitest color, and then going down in the alphabet, and this defines the price. And then also the clarity. Of course, you can have a loop clean diamond and there are no inclusions at all, but if you look here on the chart, there you see there are different inclusions from, you know, very, very small inclusions 1, very, very small inclusions 2. You don't see them with the naked eye. So also the very small inclusions 1 or very small inclusions 2, you don't see them with the naked eye. That you recognize those inclusions, which are just natural inclusions, that starts with the size small inclusions, SI. So depending on how big your stone is, the bigger your stone is, of course, the more visible an inclusion will be, but also be aware that it depends where the inclusion sits on the stone. Is it on the bottom of the stone, or is it, you know, on the side where maybe it will be covered by a prong, or is it just in the middle of the stone? So this also changes a lot, and this is also written down in the certificates. Also make sure that you choose a stone that comes with a certificate as of a carat of 0.3 carats. That is really essential, and go for serious institutes. So the most renowned and the most accepted worldwide being GIA, that's the Gemological Institute of America, but there are also others out there like IGI or the Hoher Rat for Diamant, so that's HRD, and then you can be sure that if they classify the stone being of a certain caratage, especially color and clarity, that later on, should you ever want to resell or re-evaluate your stone, there's not going to be another Gemological Institute coming along telling you, no, the color that is written on your certificate is not right, your color is a minor quality. So this is very, very important that you go for really established Gemological Institutes, and be aware that if people have a diploma from GIA. Very often you can buy relatively cheap stones, and then it says it comes with a certificate from a person XYZ who has a diploma from GIA. Well, that is not the same than having a certificate, a GIA certificate. If you have a GIA certificate with your stone, and also make sure that the number of the certificate is lasered into your stone, so you're sure that the stone matches the certificate and there is no mistake about it, then should you ever want to resell your stone, then you're well set and then you can go. So these are the lasered stones. So natural diamond, they should be lasered, they should come with a certificate from a serious, recognized, internationally recognized institute, and then you see what caratage of stone, what color, what clarity, and what cut you can get out of your budget, and then you decide for yourselves. But that's really, really important to know, and you should really be aware of that. Also be aware that diamonds can have a fluorescence. That means that in black light they shine kind of blue. That's a natural characteristic of the stone. That's nothing bad and it's nothing good. There are even some jewelers who only work with that. That's a choice you have to make. But what you have to know is that in Asian markets they don't like fluorescent stones, meaning if you should ever want to resell your stone, then your market where this stone will be acceptable will shrink, because all the Asian markets, they will not pay as much for a fluorescent stone, or at least a stone with strong fluorescence. You can go for a stone with faint fluorescence, or medium maybe, or none at all. This is what I would recommend, none or faint. Or you say, no, but I like this characteristic because it has this, this characteristic, and there are some jewelers, as I said, they only work with these kind of stones. Then you are in the know, you take this decision, but you are aware that the Asian market will not be so much interested in buying such stones. Now, when it comes to the cut, I personally find that very important. I think that the cut is even more important than the caratage and even the color. It gives the stone the sparkle. You should have a perfect cut, and if we talk about the round diamonds, that means you have the cut is characterized, the polish is characterized, and the symmetry is also listed in the certificate. So you can have a triple excellent stone, and that means you have the maximum sparkle. I find that quite important, especially when it comes to white diamonds, and that's the only characteristic of the stone that is man-made, and you should know that this adds a lot to the value of the stone. I mean, this is what makes the diamond the shiny, attractive stone that it is, and that is this sparkle, and it comes from the cut. So be aware of that, pay attention to that, and also if there is a good symmetry in the stone, then there is a good relation from the weight of the stone and the perceived size of the stone, because the weight only says how heavy the stone is. If it's not well cut, then you can have a heavy stone that has quite a lot of depth, but that from above looks small. You don't want that. If you pay a lot of, you know, for the carats, because there's a lot of stone in weight, you also want the appearance to be quite big and equilibrated, and you want also the breakage of the light to be optimal. So be aware that this is defined by the cut and especially the symmetry when it comes to the brilliant cut. And the brilliant being nothing else than a round cut diamond. So look into it out there on the internet. There are so many informations, and also know that the digitalization has changed the entire world of how to buy diamond jewelry or loose diamonds, meaning that nowadays diamond dealers, they don't sit on stones and they don't have them in their safes. They can reach out to certain providers and they have digital lists, and they can go by characteristics, specifics that you define, and they search the very stone that you are looking for. So don't ever expect a diamond dealer nowadays to have, I don't know how many stones in his safe. He will maybe have a few, but most of them are somewhere in the world, and he can bring them to you and buy them and source them for you. And should you be interested, you can always contact me. I will be able to source some stones for you, and I will make sure that you get the best value for money. If you should be interested, reach out to me if you are in doubt. There is so much to know. I cannot cover impossibly everything in this video, but I already go quite in depth, and I do not want to, you know, overwhelm you with the information. Now, when it comes to my engagement ring, there is a very funny story to it, and I want to tell it to you because this also makes the value the really subjective value of a jewel, and I want to explain it on the basis of my stone. So we girls, we have maybe specific expectations on how our special other should ask us to get married, and there are really romantic people out there. There are other people who are very busy. I have a very busy partner, and let me tell you, it was not very romantic, and honestly I got married without my engagement ring. I was wearing the engagement ring of my great-grandmother all the time, and now I finally got my engagement ring that is also the reason why I had to postpone a bit the production of this video, because I had it forged and it took a bit longer to get it, but also all the pieces that we brought together took time to assemble them, because probably I know too much about everything and I have very, very special ideas on what I want. So I told you I will be talking about fancy colored diamonds, which are colored diamonds, and so the most renowned are and yeah, very sought after nowadays are the pink ones, fancy pink diamonds, especially the ones from the Argyle mine in Australia, which has been closed shortly. They're rising even more in value. And there are also blue fancy colored diamonds out there. There are also yellow ones, especially the ones from the mine Zimi in Africa. They are absolutely like canary bird color, and they're really beautiful. And the most expensive ones being red ones, they call them pigeon blood red, and they're very, very rare. So it goes really by rarity and the price. And you have to know that that's a completely other price category. So if you want a really special stone, believe me, it's not the white colored stones, they are the colored ones. But of course, because of the price, your stone will probably be smaller if you go for a colored stone, a colored diamond, than if you go for a white one. But it's a bit more special. So now my idea was, I wanted my stone to go with my personality, with my skin tone, with the colors that I like to wear most often. And so I was into pink diamonds, but I didn't want my stone to be too small. So now a pink diamond in a size, in a carat weight that is not too small, that is quite an investment. And not only an investment, I don't want to feel unsafe, and I don't want to have the impression that I have to walk it with a security guard by my side. So my idea was, why don't I go for a slightly brown, a light brown diamond? So brown diamonds, like any other fancy colored diamond, you categorize the intensity of the color in different stages. And when it comes to brown diamonds, it's categorized from C1 to C8, and C1 being very, very light brown to C8 being really dark chocolate brown. I wanted to go for light brown like C2, knowing that those stones don't only have their basic color being brown, more or less, but they also have hues. Like a brown diamond can have an orange hue, that's not so much my color, but they can have pink hues. And then I thought, why don't I go for a brown diamond that is much cheaper than a pink diamond, but I take a brown diamond in the basis, but I take a pink hue. Now, that is not so difficult to find that, but me being a bit specific, I didn't want to have a brilliant cut. So I didn't want to have a round diamond, a brilliant cut. I wanted to have a cushion. And I also wanted to have a cushion in a cut that does not reflect too much light, because when it comes to the fancy colored diamonds, I recommend that you do not go for too much light breakage and too much reflection, because then you cannot really appreciate the color so well. I mean, of course, if it's a very dark color, that doesn't matter, but if it's a brighter color, then if you have too much reflection, you cannot appreciate the color too much. So I wanted to have a cushion cut, but not the modern cushion cuts, which are normally cushion modified brilliants, and they look like crushed ice. So they have a lot of facets and there's a lot of things going on. I wanted to have a cut where I could appreciate the color. So I wanted to have an old mine cut, which are old European cuts, and they have less facets and they reflect less light. So, and that was really difficult to find it in the carats I wanted, the size of stone I wanted, in a good polish and cut, and also in the color. So this combination was quite difficult, and found many brilliant cuts, but I didn't want a ground cut. And then I came across a Sri Lankan cutter of sapphires, and he has the most beautiful sapphires you can imagine, and he had a peach colored sapphire, and it looks exactly like the color I was looking for in a diamond. And on top of that, it came with a special step cut that didn't have the crushed ice appearance, which I dislike. So this was already very difficult to source this central stone. Now, this is very subjective. Some of you might not like it. It's just as an example. So if you have a very specific idea, a blue stone, a green stone, or whatever, then just be in the know of what is possible and what choices out there. And yeah, then I saw a vintage design of a stone that I liked a lot. As you can see here, it's an empire style, and I thought, well, maybe that could be something, but I was already in doubt if that would work, you know, for stacking it in front of my wedding band. And turned out that we simulated it together with my goldsmith, and it was far too much. Then I said, okay, I want to have really the dominance of this sapphire in this peach color, but I want to, in order to enhance the stone and the speciality of the stone, I want some diamonds as side stones. But again, I wanted cushion cuts, in that case white diamonds in a good quality, and I didn't want again this crushed ice look. And there I got lucky over my goldsmith. So I want to tell you that also the goldsmiths who are regularly working with diamond dealers, with gemstone dealers, with the setters, etc., they are also a good source if you have a special idea and you cannot find the stone. Then if you're as individualistic as I am and obstinate to get your design, then it's a really good idea to turn towards them. And she sourced the most beautiful side stones, as you can see on this picture. And rose gold matching my skin tone the best. I wanted the setting and the ring to be in finest rose gold, 18 karat gold. So let me show you the pictures of different stages where we tried it on. Then on this one it looks kind of as if the ring was already finished, but there the stones are only held by paste and they are not set yet. It was to simulate the ring. Of course, the middle stone sitting much higher than it finally did here. But this is to show you that you don't have to be afraid that at the end the ring will not be looking like you imagined it, because you have those different stages where you can still correct it. And this is also what makes this ring so special to me, because we sourced all the stones specifically for me. We worked on the design together with my husband. We went to the goldsmith together. She took really good care of us. And so also the story of the creation of the design of this ring, knowing that there is no second ring in the entire world looking like mine, this makes it really special, and I'm so happy with the result. And I'm sure it's not going to be the last piece that I'm going to ask Mareike to make for me. I want to thank her. Mareike, you are just the best, and I can only recommend her. And I'm sure that in your local markets you will also find good goldsmiths, and especially with the pandemic having weakened the economies, think about your local artisans, what they can make. And I know that brands are attractive, but you have to know that if you turn to brands like the big ones that we know, I don't want to, you know, bash any of these, but you know, the ones, the luxury brands, I have checked out them. I went to different ones, and let me tell you, the prices, what I have now, would cost about 6 times as much, 7 times as much in those shops. And it's gonna be, it's not even made for me, and it doesn't have this real personal value, and other people might be wearing the same ring. So be aware that when buying from those big brands, you pay for the intangible brand assets of these brands, but you don't get better stones. The stones are in fact coming out of the same mines, because there are not so many mines or mining companies out there in the world. And also, if your better half should be buying your engagement ring at a period of the year, let's say before Christmas or before Valentine's Day, when many other people are looking for stones, then he might not even have the choice of the stones he wants, because there's not everything there and he needs it for a specific date. So take your time, plan ahead of time, communicate what you like, give hints or brief your best friend, your sister, your mother, or whomever, so that they can give the information to your future husband, so that you are not disappointed. But be aware that the brand itself, you will not recognize from which brand the jewel is, because there is no branding on it like on a handbag. And you can also imitate certain designs or design elements that you like from big brands. And yeah, maybe also look at the old jewelry that is out there, the vintage jewelry, because this is also something very sustainable to do, to maybe go for a ring that is already exists and that you can find in those interesting marketplaces that I mentioned before, like Etsy, Ruby Lane or Katawiki. So get the inspiration from there, definitely, because you want a timeless piece, and what you see nowadays in the shops is what is fashionable today, but you want your ring to be fashionable in 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 years from now. And it's a very, very good idea to have a look at the vintage pieces. And there are some designs out there, let me tell you, back then they knew what they did. They had really beautiful stones, and you know, workmanship was cheaper, so there are very, very fine pieces out there. Don't forget that, don't neglect that. Should you like this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and also comment down below. And if I can help you, if you have any questions or doubts, don't hesitate to ask me. I'll be glad to help. Yes, and at the end of this video I will show you my final ring. It will not be the dream ring for all of you, but maybe for some, but it's just an example so that you know you can have your very special piece made according to your very personal taste.